Welcome, everyone, to the Pursuit Power Half Hour. I'm Brent Trimble, and I'm thrilled you're joining us for our very first session in this new series designed specifically to sharpen your professional services edge. This is where we cut through the noise and get straight to the strategies that will make a real difference in your day-to-day. As you know, the demands on operations for services teams are only increasing. That's why each month we'll be diving deep with an expert guest to unpack a critical challenge you're facing. Today, I'm excited to welcome Greg Hensley from the Resource Management Institute and RTM Consulting. Greg's an authority in the field. We're going to be tackling a challenge that I know keeps many of you up at night: essential strategies to optimize your resource forecasting, skills management, and agility. Get ready for a fast-paced, action-packed discussion that will equip you with the insights you need to move from reactive resource firefighting to proactive control. Greg, welcome.
Well, thanks, Brent. It's great to be here. Chat about a topic I think we find top of mind. I think with many PS leaders.
No, that's great. And before we dive in, if you could give the listeners and the viewers just a bio, a background, both on yourself, the Resource Management Institute, which is the RMI, and RTM Consulting, just for context.
Certainly. So my entire professional life has been in professional services, leading up to joining the RMI about 3 years ago. Prior to that, several high-tech organizations leading not only professional service organizations, but also building resource management offices at the same time. So I had a unique responsibility in seeing how resource management can kind of form and optimize a PS organization that I was already running. So that was quite intriguing to see. A little bit about the RMI and RTM Consulting. So RMI stands for Resource Management Institute. We do a couple things. We're really the leading most authority on resource management around the globe. A couple ways in which we do that is we conduct research on a variety of topics related to resource management that we conduct every single quarter. We also host webinars. We host 2 major events, one that's an in-person event bringing resource management professionals from around the globe together to network, but then also to learn kind of what are some of the trending practices or what are some of the things that we should be thinking about and looking to implement and within our respective organizations. But then also, more importantly, another thing that we do is provide the resource management certified professional training. So it's a certification for resource managers that are out there that can gain some of what I think you and I will probably talk about here today, and how they can implement that to improve some of the things that I think we certainly want to help people optimize in the PS field.
And I've had some colleagues who've gone through the training and obtained the certification and speak very highly of that. So that's excellent. So, Greg, you work with a lot of professional services organizations, and from your perspective at RMI and RTM, from this vantage point, what's the most significant shift you're seeing in the landscape that's making effective resource management and consequently professional services operations so much more complex than it was even a few years ago? Beyond just more demand or oscillating demand or ebbs and flows in demand, what's the nature of the complexity?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So many struggle with resource management and PS, and I kind of relate it to like any athlete that wants to get better at their sport. They really have to ground themselves in the fundamentals of their craft and being very process driven. So when it comes to resource management, the RMI, we focus our fundamentals on the just-in-time resourcing model, and that helps them start to mitigate. It starts to kind of breaks this complexity down. But it takes time to kind of work that definition in, the process, and some of that thing across your organization. Now, going back to your second question regarding the source of complexity, I'm not sure RM has gotten more complex. Rather, we have found over the last few years it's gaining broader adoption and becoming more visible, and it's looked at as a critical component of PS organizations. So in effect, the light is getting much larger and it's shining brighter because I think PS organizations are looking at this as a way to gain efficiency, gain some financial optimization through some of these sound practices. And our members are telling us that in many cases it's internal versus external factors that are creating some of that complexity or perceived complexity. in adopting resource management in their PS organization because maybe they've done the same thing over and over again. Skills inventory and that information is embedded in leaders' heads versus being out in a place to where it's fungible for others to use across not only one group but maybe multiple groups. We feel that internal factors kind of become a greater problem than external factors in getting resource management in place. And so, case in point is I'll reference what we call our RMI playbook, which targets kind of the top 10 fundamentals of a future-ready RM. And I know we don't have time here today to cover all 10 of them, but I did want to hit on a few of them because most of these focus on strategies that you can control to really kind of mitigate the complexity that we're talking about. And that first one, it might seem very obvious, which is, hey, secure and cultivate executive support for RM to ensure proper positioning of that RM function within the organization. Might seem easy, but obviously that's the first step. It's a bit challenging because we want to gain not only executive but stakeholder ownership and support for the RM organization. And so we want to understand that from whether it's the service executive, the partner, practice leader, whomever that might be, whatever organization we're talking about here in the markets that they serve, do we have that in place? And then quickly we go into then putting together what we call kind of a resource management charter. And this really just articulates the organizational design of the RMO, its mission, objectives, responsibilities, some of those things that we would consider as part of scope. But then at the same time, we're getting kind of leadership on board with what this is doing, the purpose it serves, the value that it provides, the benefits that the business is going to feel from it, in this example, the professional services organization. And then third, we start to adopt kind of that enterprise process. And we'll get a little bit more into this when we start talking about our just-in-time resourcing model, which is a way for others who are looking to kind of solve some of this complexity. We've kind of already done it for you and breaking it down into 6 kind of components of what we call the just-in-time resourcing wheel. And it's something that all should kind of reference. You can see it, go read about it. You already mentioned you had some colleagues that have attended resource management certification training. You can learn a lot more about it there. But these are the things that we feel are kind of building blocks. That's why we kind of call it the top 10 of the RMI playbook. It's a way to kind of break down complexity. And there's no expectation that you're going to go and just run through all 10 of these. It's going to take some time. But if you can kind of march through it and build upon, layer upon layer, you'll start to see kind of these maybe complex things that you walk into each week or walking into the new year, I think start to mitigate and dissolve a little bit over time.
Oh, that's outstanding. And we're going to touch on just in time because that's a really interesting concept. And there's this need for professional services leaders, whether in, management consulting or the internal ProServe team of a platform or technology, of anticipating the need, anticipating the people to have the right resources to deploy at the right time on an engagement. And that always contrasts with this daily Tetris that leaders have to do to sort of, pull and move people. It's very dynamic. So this notion of anticipatory, 30, 60, 90, 120 days and beyond out is often abstract. How do you break that down and what kind of frameworks do you put in place and strategies so that these challenges that often kind of result in planning failure can be mitigated?
Yeah. So it all begins, and some people are going to get sick of hearing this, but it begins with getting the right data and having underlying processes in place to ensure that the data upon collection kind of becomes the source of truth for operations. All too often, we'll walk into situations where we're consulting with organizations, and they're looking at and they're going, "Hey, we've identified skills and roles on the supply side, but then we find out that they've not done it on the demand side," and we're like, "Whoa, wait a minute here. we need to talk apples to apples here in order to really kind of cross these two together to provide kind of or produce the visibility that we need in order to produce a forecast." Because a forecast is the outcome of normalized roles, skills, and assignment data, both from demand and supply. So we've got to have both. And then we've also got to have a mechanism in place, and we call it an interlock process, a mechanism in place that allows you to stay on top of that information because We hear the story about the fast moving deal that's coming through. It's going to sign next week. It's going to sign next week. And then all of a sudden it falls flat on its face. Yet we've been planning for it. Or the other project that we say is going to end, at the end of this month, and it goes on for another 2 or 3 months, yet no one provided that input or that data into the process to inform us that how this is going to potentially impact how we do staffing, and obviously more importantly the forecast side of this. And so we want forecasts to be able to direct our decisions. And so if a forecast isn't seen far enough out, then we're always in that reactive mode that you're talking about, and not able really to kind of get ahead of things and plan ahead, and not only source them with different options. The longer the forecast visibility is, the more options then that you have at your disposal to kind of solve that particular problem, whether it be in-house resources, external resources, so on and so forth.
So you bring up a really important point around the data and synchronizing data, as well as can be, between the demand on resources and supply. How do operations leaders then put that into practice, move beyond simply reacting to resource potential shortages, and really move into the state of proactive planning? Do you have some concrete examples of maybe leveraging AI, real-time data that gives real foresight to give these leaders kind of an edge and inputs on potential resource crunches that are coming?
We want to start at the foundation of resource management, or what I kind of call the core of resource management, which is our roles and skills. And that role definition has to be focused on, let's describe the roles that we perform on a project. It's not the job description title that somebody holds in our engineering team, or in our support or development team, or in our professional services team. Rather, it's what describes the roles that we have on a project, whether it be a project manager, an engineer, a consultant, so on and so forth. So we have to feel good about that we've got that characterized right, and that's also how we're going to reference it on the demand side, or as new opportunities come through. We're going to break down those opportunities in a way to where it breaks down to those role levels. The next thing then is that skill structure. That becomes so important, because all too often we'll see where skills have been put into a system, but they're no longer relevant. And I'll always say we need to have a relevant skills inventory. And that doesn't necessarily mean that when we build it, we go and we source every single skill that Brent has possessed in his entire life, even though it's not applicable to his current, project or job scope. Let's make certain we got things that are relevant in our skills inventory. And so that really becomes the foundation for building this. But then how do we maintain it? To your point, how do we maintain this? And that's where we get into this interlock structure that we talk about. And it's got a bunch of different levels to it, and it starts down at the bottom, which is the resource management level, and staying in touch with different levels of the organization. So number one, we're talking about resource request information potentially coming in, or changes to assignments that are coming in. How are we staying on top of that? How is the funnel created to collect all that, all that's coming from our demand? The next level then moves up to kind of these weekly checkpoints with management, to the example I referenced earlier, which is projects are moving around, in-flight projects, maybe renewal projects that we have, or maybe net new projects are obviously moving around. Who is staying on top of those, so we know we have good data to reference, and with regards to that demand, to then overlay that into a forecast. The next one, which is the one that sometimes can be the bigger leap for organizations, is then the sales. I'll call it sales, account leadership, wherever the demand's coming from. Resource management needs to have that connection there to understand where are all the sources of demand, because sometimes we get lost in that all the demand is coming from the sales organization, or it's all net new demand. That's not true. We have in-flight projects that are also maybe extending. There's change orders. We may have renewal type work that's renewing every single year. That's still demand in our world. So we have to make certain that we've got kind of a finger on that and know where it's heading. So that's an important piece to really establishing that demand side information or data. And then that very last mark that you get to is kind of this monthly or maybe even quarterly level executive check-in, which gives them this information around whether or not we're looking at a gap or a resource surplus maybe in the months ahead, and what do they need to do to take action on this? Is there investment that you're asking from them in order to bring resources into the organization? Is there maneuvering going across teams, or maybe there's a contractor that we're working with or a new one that we need to bring into the fold that possesses skills that we don't? This gives them some runway to make those decisions versus it being this fire activity around us trying to staff it, make the decisions, get investment. If we can stay ahead of that and know kind of where we're trending, either from a deficit from a gap or surplus perspective at the monthly level, then that gives us greater insight, and it all really kind of comes back to talking that same language on the demand and supply side and at that role and skill level.
All this sounds fantastic, wedding demand with supply. And you bring up a really important note that all demand is not just net new logo acquisition. It's the changing dynamics of the facts on the ground with an existing project, a renewal, a change in scope from an existing client, and so forth. So we've talked about wedding data, supply data to demand data, the complexity of this data. Some demand is not always net new. There's just dynamic changes with clients, and talent may switch out and become unavailable and so forth. How can the right technology not just provide data, but actually drive operations teams to adapt, pivot, be more confident to address these always dynamic changes, or even like macro market shifts? And importantly, how do they prepare? How do they get ready for the changes in both market supply and demand, but different types of modalities and technologies to empower their organizations to really drive these changes?
Yeah, so we've talked about data a lot on both sides because that's kind of the root of a lot of these things that we want to adopt from a technology perspective. And then number two, we talked about kind of having proper resource management practices in place that's outlining how we do staffing, how we do forecasting. We talked about the Interlock model and how we kind of help make certain that data itself is our single source of truth. Once we have all that in place, we can feel pretty confident about kind of the inner workings of our organization. And as we bring and kind of fold technology into that particular situation, there's a lot of things that then we can start to do because we're confident in the data, we're confident in our processes, and now technology can really start to accelerate what it is that we're doing. And so a few things that we're asking folks that we consult with, as well as folks that we teach, and also our members, is that get that data right, get those processes right, but then also, as many of them are asking us, hey, what about AI? What do I need to do? Is it going to remove this particular task or work that I do? And we're like, let's stay centered in the data and the process, and then let's look at AI and think about it from each of your technology providers' perspective, and ask them kind of what's the roadmap. Where is this going, and what are some things that where they're steering with this particular technology? But then also reflect on your own business and go, what are some things that we think are good use cases for my technology provider to maybe solve if they haven't already? Because maybe I've got a wonderful use case that they haven't thought about, or maybe they're looking to explore and they need additional information and business requirements about that. So some of this is early stage, some of it is right in the fire of everything that we're seeing as this new innovation is coming out. And I think it's going to make a big help resource management organizations quite a bit.
Weaving all this together, how can the right technology provide this data precision, visibility, insights, and empower organizations to pivot and be able to adapt to unexpected changes, market shifts in demand? And can you give some examples that you've seen in this? Maybe starting with some organizations that lack this kind of technology to those that are able to deploy it effectively.
We will often repeat to members that we either we're consulting with or teaching that technology is not the silver bullet to maybe solving all these challenges that they have. But if you've got the proper processes and data in place, boy, they will amplify what you're trying to do. They will make things much more efficient for you. But not a lot of technology players want to come in and deal with garbage in, and they know that they're going to spit garbage out. So they want to be able to have some sort of support from their customer and the organization that they're working with, to define, here's how we generate demand, here's how we generate supply, and how can your tool or your product help us. And I'll kind of do this in two parts. I'll first start with a little bit of the data side of this, since we've already talked about that a little bit, and understanding kind of how do we capture it. That seems like a very basic question, but it's one that's all too often where organizations that might be living in spreadsheets, they might be living in the data that they need for resource management might be in 2 or 3 different systems. And so you've got various sources of truth. And so we've got to be able to find a way to get that together. And so these technology solutions that are out there, the PSA solutions that are there will help bring that together. But we've got to understand where it's at. So we got to think about this from a capture perspective. The next step then we get into is how do we perfect it? So the data, we found it, we're pulling it together, but now how do we perfect it? And that's where we start to reference some of this interlock process that I was talking about at the different levels. And we just have to iterate through this, because this technology solution is not going to know whether the data is good or bad. It's us that's going to know whether it's good or bad through using our process framework to really kind of work through it. Once you've kind of got to that stage, everyone believes this is the proper, this is the source of truth. Then boy, you can really start to automate a lot of that, not only with what configuration and tools that are available in the market now can help with, but now you're starting to set yourself up a little bit for the AI revolution as well. And so we think there's a lot that's coming in that particular field. We think there's only going to amplify resource management, and there's still going to be a major people component of this, but some of this tactical maneuvering, even some of the analysis level work that we're having to do maybe on the side in a spreadsheet, or trying to build some sort of a custom report. If we're working off a single source of truth and we've got a real good process around our data, these tools, or particularly these AI tools, are really going to start to help advance, where we're going. So I'm kind of seeing it in a couple different areas. Obviously skills management, kind of automation maybe of recurring project staffing. So like we spoke about the renewals, there may be some work that it can do there. Staff optimization at the portfolio level, which is something that we advocate for in resource management. How can we make resources more fungible across different practices? And so that's another way where AI may be able to help us there. The very difficult process of conducting resource shifting, where there may be a prioritization change or an unexpected absence of a resource, and now we've got to shift stuff around. I think AI can help with that. And then we've got some of these things from a forecast perspective where I think it can help with some alerting around certain maybe parameters. Are we exceeding or below margin? Are we exceeding below our bench metric that we have, or utilization? There's a lot of things that it can start then telling us versus those being kind of rear view mirror views that we have today. Maybe through the reports that we have, we can be advised on some of these decisions and this work that we're doing now. How is it impacting, what the future is going to be? And it's already telling us what that impact is going to be.
That's fantastic. So some real practical deployment examples of the types of technology and wedding these data sources together to give leaders the insights and the foresight that they need. Greg, this has been great. We appreciate you sharing the expertise, and it's been a great conversation and webinar. To everyone watching, we really appreciate you joining us. If you're curious how Kantata can help you level up resource forecasting, skills management, and corresponding agility, stick around. We're going to walk through how our platform helps teams surface best fit talent fast, so you can staff smarter and drive better business outcomes. Again, Greg, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Brent.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I'm a solutions engineer here at Kantata. And at Kantata, we believe the future isn't just about automating tasks. It's about optimizing performance. And that means shifting from static reports and manual tracking to something a lot more dynamic. Right? We like to think of ourselves as the Waze of professional services, constantly adapting to changing conditions, guiding teams through the best outcomes, and helping organizations navigate complexity with confidence. In this quick demo, I'll show you how you can put accurate, always up-to-date resource and skills data at the center of your capacity planning. Because when you know who can do what, when, you can see it in real time, and you can plan with clarity and act decisively. So resource management goes so much deeper than just finding any available person to fill an unstaffed role. Right? In order to truly optimize your teams and project success, how do we ensure we have the right people on the right projects at the right time? And I like to think of the skills really as the DNA of your project success. Right? Without an accurate understanding of who can do what, you're essentially flying blind. Right? And with Kantata's skills matrix here, you're able to capture really any relevant criteria, whether that's hard skills, certifications, languages, maybe even leveraging that 1 through 5 rating to account for proficiency, experience, even desire to learn a new skill. So consider a scenario where, we've projected a new AI implementation project, right? But our skills data for, say, machine learning specialists is incomplete or outdated. What happens then, right? We're going to staff the project, but we might staff the wrong people, leading to delays, cost overruns, unhappy clients, right? So missed or outdated data can really create chaos down the line, impacting everything from project delivery to client satisfaction. So Kantata really ensures that your skills are always accessible and current, giving you the clarity you need to forecast accurately. Now, let's move from reactive to proactive resource planning and talk about optimizing capacity planning in real time. Right? Historically, resource planning has always sort of been more of a reactive firefighting exercise, if you will. A project hits a snag, suddenly everyone's scrambling to find available talent. So Kantata is really aiming to kind of flip that script, if you will. We leverage the power of real-time data to anticipate resource needs before challenges arise, quickly understanding, how busy the team is right now, any future resource demands, and then being able to immediately see where we have available capacity across the team and where bottlenecks might be starting to form down the line. So, for example, these strategic insights can really uncover trends across the entire portfolio, or even getting more focused with this to say, show me the upcoming capacity across all of my consultants or everyone with business intelligence experience, right? And being able to say, if you're seeing a consistent spike in demand for, let's say, business intelligence skill set, Kantata can proactively let us know the next best action, right? So do we need to start planning for hiring, training, reprioritizing projects, or even just slotting in an external contractor for shorter spurts in demand? So it allows you to confidently manage risks by seeing potential issues well in advance. All right. Now, finally, let's look at making data-driven resource adjustments. So the true power of Kantata really comes to light when you can see the impact of your decisions in real time. This is where resource recommendation and scenario planning becomes really invaluable. So when a new project comes down the line, for example, we can see this pipeline engagement here. Instead of guessing which resources might be able to take on work or combing through each individual resource, searching for a match, what if the insights could actually just find you? Right, we can leverage things like AI insights to quickly surface potential resource needs, requirements, recommendations. And we can actually just immediately run recommendations to analyze the entire resource pool, right? Analyzing for skills, roles, availability, cost impact, really whatever you might care about when staffing. And with this recommended group, for example, I can see that, it looks like Amy is missing one skill here. Is that really critical for the project? Maybe we should look to someone else. And for Anne, right, it looks like she's actually a perfect match in all attributes, but she's completely booked on other work during that time. Is this something where we can kind of move resources around to secure her on this engagement? Or perhaps we just need to look to someone else, right? And then coming back to that financial component as well, the cost impact here. Maybe for this specific project, we really need to prioritize protecting margin. So Again, empowering you to have those conversations and essentially just make those data-driven decisions when needed. Now, this ties back to the theme we talked about earlier of just ensuring the right people on the right projects at the right time. And perhaps for this project, right, maybe I don't really care what the role title is, but the skills are going to be most critical. Or maybe this is an on-site, right? The geography must match down below. Maybe I don't even want to entertain anyone that's not available at the moment. You have the authority to make any of these decisions and play around with those scenarios here as well. Now, of course, this is servicing a purely objective recommendation based on really tangible attributes, but resourcing is a bit of a science and an art as well. So having the authority here to just play around and try out various resources. This is a human-powered business. I anticipate there's always an aspect of human intervention, because if I know that, hey, Jim works really well with this client, I have the ability to, run those different scenarios on the fly for optimal staffing. Now that you've seen how Kantata empowers teams to solve for visibility, capacity planning, and resource alignment, you might be wondering, what's the best way to get started? For organizations looking to move quickly, we do offer a resource management quick start program. It's a focused 4-week engagement designed to help teams gain early visibility into resource needs, improve capacity planning, and reduce operational risk, all with a streamlined onboarding experience and lower upfront investment. It's a practical way to start making smarter staffing decisions while laying a strong foundation for broader adoption of Kantata's full-featured professional services automation solution. So thanks for joining us in this session. Hope you enjoyed it and got some great insights from this topic.